Well, the big picture, I think, is that it was the day that Labour lost the last shred of credibility that it had on the management of the economy. Alistair Darling had to admit that Labour has presided over the worst recession since the Second World War, that our deficit will be the biggest of any G20 country, unemployment is rising at an unprecedented rate, and we're going to have this £1.4 trillion mountain of public debt. We're going to borrow £600 billion over the next 4 years. So a pretty horrific landscape. And he then went on to make some very optimistic projections about growth and the recovery of public revenues, and to build on the back of that a sort of scenario of recovery over the next 10 years in the public finances. Frankly, the whole thing is incredible. It's a pre-election budget. It doesn't tell the truth about the scale of the problem that we face, and it hasn't really begun to get to grips with the problem that has to be dealt with. And our priority in terms of trying to avoid Labour's tax increases will be the tax on jobs, the national insurance hike that's set to come in 2011, which runs the very real risk of choking off the economic recovery just as it's getting going. I think we are in for a further period of considerable shrinking of the UK economy. I think the real question is where it goes after that, whether, as the IMF and many others have suggested, it bottoms out and the recovery is really quite slow, the Nike curve, if you like, or whether, as Alistair Darling prefers to pretend, the recovery will be rapid, a sort of V-shaped recession, and by 2011, according to Alistair Darling, it will be growing again at 3.75%, 1% above the historic trend rate of growth. I think that to most people seems a reckless assumption to make. And of course, if you substitute for those growth figures the kind of figures that the IMF is suggesting, then you get a very different picture of the public finances, even if the 50p tax rate delivers the yield which he says it will, which I very much doubt, even if all his other assumptions prove to be correct. If growth is slow, there will still be a massive black hole in the public finances which he really hasn't addressed, and he won't address this side of the general election.